So I've made no secret about my love of Breath of the Wild on this channel. It is my favorite game of all time. I come from a background of covering the Legend of Zelda series for nearly 20 years. I also have covered series like Metroid and other franchises at websites like Amnesia and stuff in the past. NewNintendo.net, which was an old website of mine before all of this predated Nintendo Prime here. But the Zelda series is near and dear to me. And I bring this up because I don't talk about this sort of sales data with very many franchises. Now, granted, it's very rare you get sales data like this for a franchise, but I wanted to mention this because I feel like this just goes to emphasize how special Breath of the Wild is more than 30 years into the age of the Zelda franchise. Over 18 games in, and we have the best-selling Zelda game of all time. I mean, bar none, Breath of the Wild has sold more copies on its launch platforms than it has ever sold in the history of the franchise. Now, what has happened today is we got a sales update from Media Create for Japan last week. And we kind of saw this coming for about a month now. But it is now official that The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild has sold over 1 million copies. It was at number 9 on their best-selling list for last week, moving 6,722 units, giving it a grand total of 1,004,689 units. It is only the second game in Japan to ever, from the Zelda franchise, sell over 1 million units. That's how big of a deal this really is. And beyond that, it is potentially on pace. We will have to see how it does. It's probably going to take more than just this year. It might have to go into next year. It potentially could become the best-selling Zelda game in Japanese history. So to give you an idea, here's a neat little chart that was put together back in January on Reset Era by Ashan. And it shows the sales of Zelda games overall in Japan, based on Media Create, that is. And Ocarina of Time is the #1 selling game of all time, selling 1,250,000 plus copies. Breath of the Wild is now at number 2 at over 1 million. Beyond that, we also had Phantom Hourglass, which actually did pretty decent, followed up by Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, and Spirit Tracks. Although, caveat on Spirit Tracks, it was in discount bins within weeks because they thought it would sell like Phantom Hourglass. It didn't. So even though it sold well, a lot of it was at way less than MSRP. We're talking like $5 to $10. So very cheap. Obviously, when a game goes that cheap that quickly after launch, it's probably still going to move a fair amount of units. But none of those games I mentioned, except for Breath of the Wild and Ocarina of Time, have crossed the 1 million mark in Japan. Now, as I said, Breath of the Wild is the best-selling Zelda game of all time. It has sold over 10 million units worldwide, maybe even over 11 million at this point. Breath of the Wild is the only Zelda game on its release platforms to cross the 10 million barrier. There's been nothing that's really even gotten close. We've had a couple games, get close to, maybe even breach the 9 million mark, depending on which sales figures you're looking at, but we've never had a Zelda game get across 10. And this is impressive for many reasons, and it's almost showing the milestone nature of Breath of the Wild, and really the Switch in general, because obviously a vast majority of these sales are on Switch. These sales for Breath of the Wild we're talking about, crossing 1 million units in Japan, are just on Switch. And this is important for me because the Switch itself represents a change in my life as well. I'm in my early 30s, and yet my life is still ever-changing. And I probably will be an ever-changing ordeal, not just because as Nintendo goes, I go, but just in terms of life and my children and them growing up and them experiencing video games and experiencing sports and all those things in life. I hope to help them navigate until they're old enough to navigate it on their own. And maybe they'll never want to navigate it entirely on their own. Gosh knows I don't want to go through life entirely alone. That could be a very dark experience at times. But this is just very interesting to me because Switch is awesome. Not only has Breath of the Wild, been just shattering, I believe, even though I don't have the sales data in front of me right now, that Super Mario Odyssey actually might be the best-selling 3D, quote-unquote 3D, Mario game of all time. And that alone is like, what? Really? Mario Odyssey too? So it was not just Breath of the Wild, it's also Mario Odyssey? Obviously, Breath of the Wild's accomplishment is a little more impressive in so much that for the entire franchise, for any Zelda game to ever release, nothing has sold more than Breath of the Wild. But I mean, there's been Mario games that have outsold what Odyssey is doing. There just hasn't been a 3D one that's really done it. So it's just, the Switch is creating a platform, or is a platform really, that's all about getting these sort of refreshes in long-established IP that are doing something different. And this is partially why I'm actually so excited for Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, because I feel like it's following in the footsteps of what Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey did, and that it's taking this long-established IP from the 90s, and it's like, you know what, we're going to do something different. And right now that worked for Odyssey. That worked for Breath of the Wild. Maybe it's going to work for Pokemon too. And I mean, heck, I'm actually really excited to see if they do something different with Smash, right? Think of how Smash Bros. Has been over the years, right? It's a fighting game. It's going to be a fighting game. You kind of, if you played a Smash Bros. Game, you sort of know what to expect. But are they going to bring a really weird, really interesting, really different single-player mode in? How are they going to treat the competitive scene? See, at E3, they do have a competitive demo and a for fun demo. I'm going to be playing the competitive demo. Eric's going to be playing the for fun demo, and both of us representing Nintendo Prime. And we're going to see what the differences are. I'm sure it has to do with items on, items off. Obviously, in the competitive one, I'll probably be playing against a lot better Smash players that'll probably wreck me. But that's okay. I get 45 minutes to mess around with Smash. I'm going to make do with as much of that 45 minutes as I possibly can. Probably getting wrecked in Smash. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. Like, do they make any major changes to how Smash Bros. Work? How up B works? How down B works? How Final Smashes work? Are Final Smashes even going to be in? And if they're not in, are they going to change it to something else? I'm very interested to see what design principles might change in Super Smash Bros. As well. I'm very curious, and this all started with Breath of the Wild, right? Breath of the Wild, obviously, I don't know if Switch was intending to be this way. I feel like Odyssey and now Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee are continuing it. Breath of the Wild was a Wii U game, right? Breath of the Wild was supposed to represent the future of Zelda on Wii U, and obviously, while it came out on Wii U, it also came out on Switch, on the same day, and has now kind of become that flagship title for Switch that is paving the path to doing something different with IPs moving forward. I mean, heck, you guys all know about that Star Fox Grand Prix rumor out there. Who would have ever thought we'd be talking about a Star Fox game like that? Again, doing something different that could turn out to be absolutely wonderful, and probably would have been something none of us would have ever asked for. And I feel like this all comes back to Breath of the Wild. So yes, obviously the news in this video is that Breath of the Wild has crossed 1 million units in Japan. The second Zelda game of all time to do that. The only other Zelda game to do it since 1998. But I just want to throw this out there that we're in the midst of something very special right now, and for Nintendo fans anyways. And let's just hold on, because a special generation like this, I don't think has really existed, at least since the first 3 years of Wii, maybe a couple years of DS, and outside of that, for an entire generation, probably dating back to the Super Nintendo and Game Boy era, where you just had this ultimate special system just throughout the lifetime of the system. And I feel like Switch is going to be that. It was special day one, and I feel like it's going to be special in year 5. And year 6 and year 7 until whenever Nintendo decides to move on. Anyways, folks, let me know what you think about these sales figures down in the comments below. What Switch means to you, what Breath of the Wild means to you, and Odyssey, and Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and Smash, and all these games coming. I'm just very curious to hear your opinions on all of that. All right, folks, I'm Nathaniel Robojans from Nintendo Prime, and if you like this video, you know what to do. And if you dislike the video, hit that dislike button, subscribe for more content, and I'll catch you in the next one. Chew in.